let's put this behind us. Make this a positive 30 minutes or so for all your guests.
Okay.
So can I confirm everyone can hear me okay?
Everybody here, can you just type yay there?
Great.
Great.
So, yeah, wonderful. Well, listen, firstly, I want to say I know how much this means to you, Linda. And I wanted to start our discussion today by congratulating you and to tell all your members that I think they're exceptionally lucky to have you, because I've had the pleasure of communicating with you for the last number of weeks with your many questions, but all born out of concern for the people on your group and the people that have rightly concerns about their vision, macular degeneration, or family members have that condition. And I'll say, as someone that has done research for my full career of 20 years now, the diligence and the care that you've gone to as an administrator, you're an exception. So I admire you greatly, and I want your members and I want those that are joining today to realize that, because I admire you and I think you're a brilliant person. And it's because of you I'm prepared to try and continue to help you and your colleagues with discussions like that we're doing tonight, albeit with a very bumpy start, but here we are. So you can relax now. I told you everything will be fine, and it is. So here we are.
I'm relaxed. I told you I was going to be Zen. I'm Zen. So
Zen is good.
Well, let me introduce you, and thank you for that. I told you no shenanigans, and there you start with that. You could have had me crying.
No.
Anyway.
That's okay.
Okay. Anyway, if you haven't read his bio on the event page, you really should. And I'm not going to go through everything because it would be another 30 minutes, but he's been doing research for his 20-year career on a part of our eye that is so important, and is teeny, 5.5 millimeters. He's done research, published. Now, what is it now? 113 peer-reviewed papers, or 114, or what's the number?
Honestly, I think it's 113. But we've two coming. We've two express. So we'll, maybe by Santa Claus we'll have 115. But that's okay.
Okay. Anyway, he's currently director of the Nutrition Research Centre of Ireland, which is part of the prestigious Waterford Institute of Technology. Their work, and it's amazing that your center is doing so much work with nutrition in so many areas: eye health, brain health, cancer, mental health, all with using nutrition and these carotenoids and other nutrients. In 2005, I love this story, 2005, he defended his PhD on a Wednesday, got on a plane on a Friday and headed to Georgia, of all places. And I was going to wear it, oops, but it's too cold. We have two alumni in the audience, not only Dr. Nolan. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Which is
great memories.
Augusta University or something like that. So anyway, he defended his PhD on a Wednesday and just went off as a young man to the US. He worked with somebody who's in our audience, Dr. Jim Stringham, and started out by looking at the impact of lutein in the macula. And I forgot to say that he got to Georgia because he got a Fulbright scholarship. Now that's not shabby, okay? That is not shabby at all. So anyway, I want to also say that we're going to be talking about, you're really gonna do that? You're gonna go sideways on me? Okay,
No, I tell you, I'm trying to protect my battery because I have to plug it in. So am
Oh,
I sideways still? Hold on.
okay, okay. Anyway, this isn't a sales pitch. We're
Yeah,
going to be
there we are.
talking a type of supplement, but neither of us work for them. Neither of us get any money for talking about them. And if you want help in trying to find what we'll be talking about, we'll do it outside of this. I'll help you, tomorrow, whenever. So my opening question to you, Dr. Nolan, as I warned you, is how do you go from your first study of lutein to all those years ago to adding meso-zeaxanthin, looking at the eye, looking at people with early AMD, and more recently looking at how lutein, zeaxanthin, meso-zeaxanthin impact the brain. So put your 20 years in a summary, would you?
For sure. Again, I just want to check people can hear me okay, because the audio, but that's good for you. Okay. So yeah, look, it's 20 years, and first thing to say is I'm a biochemist. And so I was a biochemist, and I'm a biochemist that had a passion for nutrition and for people's health. And the concept of doing a PhD where we could look at nutrition that was related to eye health was something that was really, really interesting to me. And I think in our early years, the success that we had was through a lot of passion, but even in many parts, naivety, freedom to kind of think in many different directions as to what might be important. But in simple principles, I think we should remind ourselves about the eye a little bit, because I like to describe the eye like a camera, and I like to look at the front of the eye like the lens of the camera, but where the magic happens is in the film of the camera, and that's your retina. Okay, so this is this specialized tissue that basically takes light and converts it into these electrical signals, and we get the beautiful sensation of having vision, our ability to see our loved ones, our ability to enjoy reading a book, to watch a sporting game, to see colors. But when I really got interested in nutrition in the eye was when I realized that the very center part of that film of the camera, the part of the retina known as the macula, just 4% of it is responsible for over 90% of all of our vision, our macula. But what's really remarkable is that at the macula, you have these nutrient pigments, these macular pigments. And in eye care, in optometry, in ophthalmology, and in the industries, people describe these pigments incorrectly. We hear the word vitamins a lot, and we hear the word minerals, and we hear the word nutraceuticals. What I want to tell your colleagues and your friends tonight is that the pigments that we've been working with and studying are actually none of the above. They're basically just antioxidants that are plant-based pigments. So think of them as pigments that exist in nature. And what's magical about them is that these pigments, known as carotenoids, they give the world its beautiful color. There's about 700 of them in nature. So when you look at birds' feathers, when you look at fruits and vegetables and fish skin and anything that has beautiful color, it's because of these pigments called carotenoids. And carotenoids are very important for plants because they protect plants. So that's why they're produced in the plants, to allow plants to grow in different types of environments. And they can protect plants because they can filter light, essentially. They have filtration properties, and they have these antioxidant properties as well. So the absolute job that these pigments are doing in the plants, they get to exhibit, use throughout our body as well. Now, as a biochemist, I was fascinated by the fact that of the 700 carotenoids that's in nature, in a typical Western diet, we consume about 40 to 50 of these. But in our blood system, which I refer to as our taxi system, this is what will carry these around to our target tissues. Now, target tissues such as the eye, the brain, the skin, and so on. By the time we get to the retina and indeed the macula, there's only 3 carotenoids. So as a biochemist, I can tell you that that's what we call biological selectivity, something that's quite uniquely happening for a particular purpose. So its location is the first thing that's strikingly important here for all of us. And I want to say to you, I understand that there's people probably on this call, on this discussion tonight, where, you know, sometimes probably the advice that they get about carotenoids and nutrition and what they can and cannot do, they may feel that that advice is not useful to them or even directed to help them. But the thing about having a healthy macula, having a healthy film of the camera, if you like, it's important always. So as the retina develops, when a newborn baby is being fed for the first time, the first proper piece of nutrition that the baby will get from its mother are these carotenoids. Isn't that remarkable? So my point is that straight away, nature wants us to have these carotenoids. And with diseases like age-related macular degeneration, as you nicely describe in your article, in your publication, you know, we all have different genetics. And as you say, the gun is loaded for all of us. Another piece to that is age. Thankfully, we're all living many, many years longer than actually we're supposed to. So our challenge now is to try and retain our health and our functions throughout those ages. So this is why I'm very comfortable when I talk about supplementation, because if we just use what's supposed to be normal nutrition, or what is crudely and wrongly considered as generic good nutrition, what does that mean? What I'm saying loud and clear here is the scientific evidence and the biology around the scientific evidence says we need to do something different to give us the protection we need throughout our life and into our later years. Now, I heard, as I was getting ready to join tonight, I listened to a few minutes of your last speaker, the optometrist. I can't remember the lady's name. And she was talking about the measurement, you know, the measurement of, you know, looking at dark adaptation and why it was important. And I agreed with a lot of the sentiments, you know, education, the discussion, the education, that's crucially important. But it's only important if you do something, if you find an answer that you can fix. So if you see that, but everyone on this call that has macular degeneration needs to be worried about nutrition of their eye.
Yeah.
We need to be proactive about nutrition of the eye. And I think that, so as you can see, I'm very, very direct on this. And I think the science is very clear on this. The frustration, I would imagine, for societies like yours is that why is it not, you know, very clearly and routinely and supportively communicated to you in a concise way that you get to use it? And the reality is it's down to education. You know, the optometrists and the medical specialists, you know, unfortunately do not have access. Well, they do have access, but they haven't had the training around how we need to use preventative medicine, nutrition, lifestyle optimization to really, you know, push the needle in the direction of protecting the retinas. Okay, so what I'm saying in summary is that what have we discussed so far? We've said, okay, we have this nutritional pigment that comes from nature. They're called carotenoids. They're highly 1,000 times more concentrated in the macula than anywhere else in the body. When I look at the back of the eye, I can see them. And as a scientist, I'm fascinated by that. The problem we have is medical ophthalmology is not so interested in it. And I don't understand that, because if we're talking about a tissue that is responsible for giving us vision, and this tissue stores all this nutrition, there's a duty of care here to understand why is it there. And that was one of the first questions we addressed. You know, are these pigments important for the disease macular degeneration? The first piece in that research question for us was to see if patients with macular degeneration had high or low levels of this pigment. So, and before we went to the actual patients with macular degeneration, we looked at general society. And we did this lovely study in Ireland, it was part of my own PhD, in fact, where we had over 1,000 people at different risk factors. So some had the genetics, the family history, some were cigarette smokers, some had really bad diets, and so on. Long story short, the three most established and important risk factors for macular degeneration, which are genetics, which we can't change today, we can change our future genetics, age, and cigarette smoking. Those three established, what we call established risk factors for the disease, were directly linked to the macular pigment scores, in that those that had those bad risk factors had much less macular pigment decades before the disease ever presents itself. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have this pigment, as I said, that's concentrated. It's deficient in the people that get the disease. Why else is it important? Well, it's important because, why would it be important? So what? Let's say, so what about this pigment? Well, if you don't have it, your macula is now vulnerable to this thing called oxidative stress. And I'll remind everyone, I'm sure you probably know this, but oxidative stress is this natural process that happens at the macula. It's the cost of doing business with life, as we say. It's something that happens all of us from the second we're born to the second we leave this earth. And normally we try and balance this kind of negative oxidative. Basically, an oxidative stress is a reaction of what we call free radicals. So these unstable molecules produced as we're metabolizing oxygen. And if the free radicals are unhappy molecules because they're missing these electrons, and they love the macula and the retina because we have these things called photoreceptors, which are our cells of vision. So what do? Unfortunately, they start to attack those cells that we need for vision. And if you do that, you get this imbalance and you get this damage. Now, when you get this damage, what happens when we get damage inside our body? What happens with COVID? The body tries to fix itself, right? It's not the COVID that's hurting us so much. It's the reaction to COVID, the immune response. And this process known as inflammation, which is how the eye tries to fix itself, is essentially the process that is ultimately, that leads you to this advanced stage macular degeneration. And that is why people that are listening tonight or today with you, you know, that may have advanced wet macular degeneration will be getting these injections. These are called anti-VEGF therapy. And the whole rationale behind this anti-VEGF therapy is that you're injecting you're basically trying to stop the retina trying to fix itself. You're stopping the overproduction of these anti-VEGF agents, of the VEGF molecules, by using anti-VEGF. So that's what the treatment is. So that treatment was a very good discovery for medical retina. It's only, as we know, suitable for about 3% of people suffering with AMD. And one thing I want to say, in case I forget it, if we believe that nutrition is crucially important to help with macular degeneration, which we do, the whole discussion as to at what stages is important is kind of funny to me. It's important for all the condition. And remember, even if we are getting treatment for anti-VEGF therapy in one eye, for that eye, we want to give the eye the best chance of getting healthier in addition to the agents that they're injecting. So why would you not put I like to call the macular pigments the sunscreen inside the eye, okay? You know, optimize it. And remember, you have another eye. And we should do everything that's possible to protect the other eye. So my point on the when I listen to the optometrist speak about, oh, well, it's good to measure and it's good to have the discussion, it's good to be I agree with all of that. But it's really important to do something about it. And you know, fair play to that optometrist, because she's gone to a level of trying to inform herself so she can help her patients. So I compliment her. But there's a piece missing, and it's the clarity around nutrition. And it's the clarity on how to use safe and targeted nutrition. And the big discovery of our time really has been, we've known, you know, there's three parts to this jigsaw of macular pigment. There's the carotenoid called lutein. There's a carotenoid called zeaxanthin, and there's a central carotenoid called meso-zeaxanthin. So what's really interesting, if you're to chop up an eye and look at a retina, which we've done, and if you're to look at the macula piece, and if you're to measure the carotenoids that are there, what you see is that you have almost equal amounts of lutein to zeaxanthin to meso-zeaxanthin. But meso-zeaxanthin is the carotenoid, and zeaxanthin that's centrally concentrated. So this seems to be the magic carotenoid right at the center. And one of our major discoveries was that patients with macular degeneration or at risk of macular degeneration, they don't have your typical mountain profile. They have this dip in their macular pigment. Okay. And so we tried to understand why that was. And the idea, and the idea put forward previous to our research was, well, you just need to take lutein. And in my own experiments, we just did lutein interventions only. And what we saw was that we had this high, what we call non-responder rate. So in a research experiment where the objective was, we want to give you a supplement to try and fix your dip in macular pigment. When we give lutein on its own, it doesn't fix the problem. But remarkably, when we give the 3 carotenoids with a high concentration of meso-zeaxanthin, we fix this volcano and fix our mountain problem. And then when we look at the kind of the further studies, once we discovered that, we were able to basically go to the governments in Europe and say, look, we've identified a nutrition deficiency in the world's leading cause of blindness. Let me prove that we can fix this with a unique combination of formulation. And we did, and we tested the 10-10-2 Macu Health intervention on the general population, because I wanted to see, could I take vision to a better level than what people accept as being normal and good vision? Because I believe by making the retina healthy, making the macula healthy, and optimizing the use of light, which is what this pigment uniquely does, I can make, the golfer team that won the Ryder Cup even better in terms of their visual function. So there's a supervision element to this. But for patients with macular degeneration, what we wanted to do was to do an intervention early on. So when people are diagnosed, when you're first diagnosed with macular degeneration, when an eye doctor, he or she looks into the back of the eye, which you can do, or if you image it and look at it with what we call OCT, so you can look at the layers. If you see changes that are kind of atypical, this is the beginning of macular degeneration. And my hypothesis and that of my colleagues was that, well, if we catch people early enough with changes, and if we're to really kind of optimize the nutrition, we can increase the macular pigment, we can enhance the health of the retina, we can reduce the risk of the disease progressing, and we can enhance visual function. And there's one other thing I really need to say here, because it's crucial, and that is in the commentary from this doctor and from others that I've seen online, we talk about the famous ARID study as being the only study, and this big study, and this lady referred to other studies as small studies. And unfortunately, that's not fair or correct to those studies, because how does someone define a study as being small or large? When you look at the studies like ARIDs, they were what we call morphology studies. So studies that were conducted to try and fix a disease. Okay, so you're measuring the disease in that case. In the studies that we've really focused on, Linda, we've been looking at visual function. Mm-hmm. So I don't think nutrition is going to fix a disease. I think it may reduce the disease getting worse, but what I really think that the macular nutrition can do is enhance the vision in those with and without the disease. And this is where the magic can happen. Because if you make the couple of reasons, and let me remind you again, if we optimize the pigment at the location where the disease normally presents, we're giving it this sunscreen effect. We're having a neutralization of the free radicals. It allows the retina to get healthier. And we're optimizing the use of light, so it allows the people to see better. So in the CREST AMD study, which was a gold standard study, when we used the 3 carotenoids plus the co-nutrients, we remarkably improved so many measures of visual function. And this is in a disease that vision normally gets worse. And I've been looking at some of the commentary on your network, and people are suffering with night vision, understandably, glare disabilities, low contrast, all these visions that are directly related to how we function. And what I'm saying to you loud and clear, and what I'm saying to science, and what I'm saying to optometry and medicine and government, is that when we do the right thing with these safe nutrients, which are stable, they're very effective. So I'm ready to have the conversation with any optometrist or any ophthalmologist. And I understand the frustrations of your network and the people because of the mixed messages and the inconsistency in messages. So one of the jobs now that I have as a scientific leader in my field, and at the stage of the career that I'm at, is to try and work with policy and government to educate them to understand how, it's not if, it's how nutrition is used and when it's used to help people, not just with the condition, but people at risk of the condition and people that are well worried by the condition, and basically anyone who wants to enhance their visual functions. It's that dramatic and it's that simple. But then you have the challenge of, well, which supplement? Okay. So I'm not sure. Do you want to ask me a question, Linda? I'm talking a lot here, I know, but are you happy for me to keep going, or how's it?
No, you keep going. The only thing I would want to clarify is, did you tell me that in the CREST AMD study, every single subject had significant improvement in the visual functions that you measured?
In some elements of visual function,
But you,
and what in that scientific experiment, yeah, in the experiment, we had to quantify what was clinically meaningful, and we did this measure of contrast sensitivity. And what we agreed with the peer-reviewed system is that one line, so a whole line, you'll be familiar with the vision charts and all the letters. And we said that in contrast sensitivity measurements, which are not acuity, and let me explain that in a second. This is when letters start to disappear. Okay. If you can improve it by one line, it's clinically meaningful. So in the combination product, we were able to improve by one line in over 35% of participants. But all patients benefited by an improvement in their macular health, their macular pigment, and elements of visual function. And Linda, let me go back to my point I made. Our study was small in sample size to the degree that we did not do the study to quantify the disease, if you like, because we would have needed like average 4,000, 5,000 to do that. But we did quantify the disease in that we sent our images to an independent AMD reading center. And you know what we found? Nobody got any worse following the intervention with their AMD. Now, take me back to my earlier study where we used a lutein-only intervention. And in that study, over the same time period with the same measurements, 50% of people ended up with progressed, unfortunately, advanced AMD. Nobody in the CREST. But I can't really get too excited about that because the study wasn't what we call scientifically powered to look at morphology. But we did look at it. But it was powered to look at visual function. Okay. Do we have some questions coming in on that?
There's one. So you are working to prevent the disease of the macula and to also improve function for those who have been diagnosed with that, right?
What lovely summary.
Great.
Yeah, great summary from whoever said that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And then, so a couple of other things to talk about. I think we should talk about where these nutrients come from. Let's speak about diet, because as a nutritional scientist, I must promote healthy lifestyle, balanced diet, but I'm also critical of general medicine that just tells us. I just went for a health check myself last week. Okay. And to be all very good, thankfully, everything good. But when I look at the dietary advice that I received myself, it's eat healthy, eat well. And I'm thinking, wow, science has progressed so much more than that to just say, we need to look at the specifics within the nutrients that we're supposed to be eating. And if we can get enough of those from good diet, brilliant. That has to be what we do. But that's what's interesting about carotenoids. The healthiest person that I know doesn't consume enough carotenoids. And I know this because I've measured thousands of people now, and I've looked at their dietary profiles, and I've looked at their macular pigment scores as I measured it in the blood and I measured it in their eye. And so what I'm saying is that diet alone is not sufficient. Now, there's other reasons why diet alone in terms of carotenoids is not sufficient. We have this, what we call devolution of nutrition, which is basically where plants are being produced because we need to farm to have more and more plants available. But if you make it easy for plants to grow, they don't have carotenoids in them, or indeed at the levels that they should have to give us sufficient amounts. So good nutrition, absolutely. Leafy greens, colored fruits and vegetables, consumption of oily fish. Let's try and do that as our pillar of good behavior. But if you, and everyone on this call, has an interest in doing something to improve a little bit more their macula, well, then you need to identify which which supplement. So, you know, a typical Western diet has about 1.5 milligrams of carotenoids. That's dominated by lutein, very little zeaxanthin, and hardly none, if any, meso-zeaxanthin. So this is the next real big thing in our scientific area. Well, why does the retina have so much meso if we're not getting it all from the diet? And this was where the whole connection between consumption of these foods, consumption of lutein, and these central dips became truly fascinating. Connecting that to the fact that it was the people on this call, primarily those with macular degeneration or at risk of, have these dips. Well, then the question was, well, if we give them lutein, can we fix it? We did, and we didn't fix it. But when we gave them, as I said, the triple carotenoids, we were able to fix it. And that mapped out beautifully with improvements in visual function in all of those patients. So the good news is, though, that we're able to now, and as a scientist, I was able to source these nutrients from, we get them from what we call marigold flowers, the cempasúchus, these beautiful flowers from Mexico. And, you know, I see it popping up, how much should we take? You know, we should take, I think the optimal amount that we've seen is a daily dose of about 22 milligrams of carotenoids combined. I want to say this, I'm not saying meso-zeaxanthin is better than lutein or lutein is better than me. I think the retina has chose to have 3 of them, the macula has. So I think the synergy, and we know this actually when you get a test tube and when you add lutein at say 20 milligrams and compare that, and this is brilliant work done by Paul Bernstein's lab, and you get meso-zeaxanthin at 20 milligrams, or if you get a combination, if you measure what we call the antioxidant potential, those with the combination of the carotenoids gives a much better antioxidant potential than lutein at the same total concentration. So the idea that we have this sunscreen antioxidant and it's better, they have this synergistic benefit, that's truly fascinating. So the fact that we're able to source something that's, when it's formulated, and we've worked with an organization in Mexico called Industrial Organica, and they are the organization that provide the exclusive formulation to MacuHealth, which I've used all the formulas. As you see from my works, I've tested hundreds of different food supplements with carotenoids for claim to use eye health. And as you probably saw in our recent work, you know, the problem isn't just how much is in it. The problem begins with those supplements in terms of how they're formulated. You know, over 65% of them had no activity or very little activity, which is a crime. So we're working to really kind of like help with regulatory in terms of certifying. So I'd say to you, you know, make sure that when you look at supplements, it has an appropriate independent laboratory validity for its active ingredients. You deserve that if you're you know, paying money to get those active supplements. And then you should look at, sorry, we have a question. Yep.
I'm sorry. I can't laugh. Okay. What about somebody who has a digestive problem and can't absorb enough of the nutrients as somebody who does not have, like IBS, for instance, or any kind of absorption problem? Is it would 10-10-2 be enough? Can they take more than 10-10-2? Take double up on the supplement, or your advice?
Yeah, so I'm reluctant to say double up on the supplement, and I say this because of dose response experiments that we've done, and that, as we point out here, is in typically a population that doesn't have digestive problems. So it's difficult for me to answer because it depends on the type of digestive problems. I know there's different types, but I think 20 milligrams is a lot of carotenoid to be taken daily. And I wouldn't be. The problem is if you go more and you do start to absorb it. One thing I'll say is that you could create a competition for other nutrients, because think of your blood system like a taxi system, and then everyone's trying to get on. And you know what we've seen with the 10-10-2 formula is that it doesn't compromise any of the other carotenoids. Okay, so I think that's really important. What I will say is that enhanced bioavailability studies, which we've just done with the Macular Health intervention, are amazing, because we've been able to use a micromycel formula, which is a formula that enhances the bioavailability. And we saw like significantly greater response for the individual, particularly meso-zeaxanthin actually, in this new formula. And all the formula is it's basically keeping the carotenoids solubilized, that they don't, because carotenoids, because of their polarity, will join together like little soldiers, and if they form these crystals, even if they're beautiful and pure. And if you have a load of crystals in your supplement, which is typically what happens with these when they're purified, they'll go into your stomach, and then the stomach and the intestine has a big job trying to get these. Some of them, because they're fat soluble, they'll actually they're not water soluble. You won't see them in urine. You'll see them in stool samples. So you pass them through basically. So I wouldn't be advising to double up. I don't think there's a rationale for it from a biochemistry perspective, regardless of what industries or others might say.
Would you say that somebody with an absorption problem is better to take something than not take something? You know, at least they're getting some extra, hopefully getting some extra carotenoids if their diet is deficient.
Yeah, it's different. Again, Linda, it really depends on the type of absorption. And one thing I want to say is, you know, none of the job of science is not to try and replace medicine.
Yeah.
Or to, you know, really what my vision for science is that we can do good science that's powerful enough to inform medicine. And that's that, and then you have to have the education piece. So we'll be vocal about it, but your direct medical care, you know, you should never leave an educate or a discussion like this and think, as frustrating as it is at times, because I know the different types of retinal, you have some brilliant retinal specialists that will give you time and talk, and I've heard the horror stories. Only one today I heard of a patient, when they asked a question, was told to get another appointment if they wanted that question answered. So very sad stories that happens. But science shouldn't replace medicine. It should support it.
Okay. We're going to get a lot of questions, I know. Okay, Barbara asked, as the drusen forms in dry AMD, do the carotenoids protect the macula?
If they're there, they will. But the problem with that, the clumping and the drusing is the result of the retina stopping to do itself, stopping to work, and becoming unhealthy. Essentially, that's what it is. It's an indicator of that, these lipid buildups, and they'll get in the way of carotenoids kind of being located and stored. So what I find interesting to that question is that actually the last place that we develop actual atrophy, drusen, and inflammation is at the very center, and that's because your macular pigment is concentrated at the very center. So it's the last place to give up the fight. That's why we see drusen present kind of asymmetrical in the macula, which I think is interesting.
Okay. Could you define carotenoids for let's see, Margaret, can you define carotenoids?
Hi, Margaret. Great question. So carotenoids are not vitamins, or as we say in Europe, vitamins. They're actually, as I said, pigments. So their clinical or their biological definition is they're lipid-like molecules. They've three parts to them: C40, H56O2. So 40 carbons, 56 hydrogens, and 2 oxygens. And because they have oxygens, the carotenoids of the eye are called xanthophyll carotenoids. So that's complicated. But basically, think of them as lipid-like molecules. And that means, Margaret, that they live in fats. And that's why the bioavailability piece is enhanced when you consume them with foods. Because you need, in order for them to go into your stomach and to be transferred through the intestine, they need to be packaged into these special packages, these micromycels, transporters, if you like, and you need a certain amount of fat to do that.
Yeah. First, I apologize. That was Sherry who asked the question, and then Sharon asked the follow-up.
Oh, sorry, Sherry.
Sorry, Sherry. Sharon asked a follow-up question. Can you explain what's so special about the Macu-Health processing? You know, in other words, it's the carotenoids are encased in a capsule that contains an oil. Is that part of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent. So so carotenoids, as I said, come from the marigolds. And what I say when I'm lecturing on this is actually the science begins in the plant. Okay. So as the first brilliant piece of science is from our Mexican colleagues in Industrial Organica, where they extract these carotenoids. And what they have to do is, carotenoids, if you think of the carotenoid molecule, just like think of a human for a second. So the main part of me, from my head to my toes, is the carotenoid molecule. But when I'm in the plant, I have these, what we call esters, and they're basically fats that are joined. So in order to purify them and take them out of the plant, you do this process called saponification, which is basically just you cook the plant, okay? But if you cook it in a certain way with food grade process, you can break off these unwanted esters, and you end up with this purified C40H56O2 molecule, so a pure molecule. So the problem with those molecules, though, and this is a great question that was brought up, is that they will be oxidized if they're not protected, because we've just taken away what normally protects them, because we want to purify them and have them available. Yeah. So what can happen then is they'll be oxidized. So at the formulation stage, so you have a very good extraction step, the saponification, you optimize the ratio of your 10-10-2, your lutein, zeaxanthin, and meso-zeaxanthin. And then you want to keep that stable while it gets itself into the supplement. So it's encapsulated. And it's encapsulated in a way, so the question was related to MacuHealth. MacuHealth encapsulated in a way that it is in an oil, a carrier. And the oil is lovely because A, it helps with bioavailability, but B, it stops it from oxidizing. So that means when you have it on your shelf, it's not going to degrade. But this comes back to the analysis of the stability, this certified, because one of the things we saw in our experiment was that over time it drops, it oxidizes very, very quickly, to the point. And if you're unsure and you have a product that's not MacuHealth, and you look at it, you'll see it lose its color. And that means it's losing its activity. So if any of you have carotenoids, one thing, if they're not in an oil, they're likely to oxidize very, very quickly. But if they start to lose, if they're powders, you'll see them lose their color. And I've measured one carotenoid supplement that was being sold in Canada, and it degraded at such a rate, 32 days, I think it was 80% degradation. And I've had this discussion with Health Canada, the government, and as you know, I've discussed with the CTV News about this, because I think this is dreadful. And that same supplement, by the way, is still available for sale, and it just shouldn't be. But we're not finished on that one yet.
Okay. I warned you about this question. Talk about the ARIDS2 formulation and how.
Yeah.
We'll just talk about the ARIDS2 formulation. Yeah. I warned you. The question is basically, how is MacuHealth different from ARIDS2? I also want to say there are questions about specific. Mike asked about specific products that have all three, and we're talking about the MacuHealth product in the US and Canada, and the MacuPrime product in the UK and Europe. And you can I'll give you all that information tomorrow of where you can get it. There's also my article that's pinned in the feature part of the on the group's page. You can find that as well. Mary asked how much. Again, we can talk about this after, because the next question is ARIDS. So.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Linda.
Part of.
Okay. So.
Part of the ARIDS question is who should take it and when.
Okay. So who should take it and when? Who should take carotenoids and when? I've kind of addressed that. You know, nature tells us straight away, as soon as a mother is feeding, the placenta is full of carotenoids. The mother becomes deprived in carotenoids. So I like to say we need to take it from the cradle to the dance floor. Okay, so that's that one. No questions asked.
Okay.
All right, moving beyond that, the ARIDS. So the first thing we should do is complement the ARIDS experiment. Now it's it's old. You know, it's a long time ago. This very expensive experiment was conducted, but it's very important because it provided proof of concept that antioxidants have a role to play for macular degeneration. Now, the frustration is that when you really kind of dig into the weeds on it, the standard of care retinal recommendation is it's maybe useful for intermediate AMD, okay, for those with intermediate AMD and stop the progression to advanced, but it had no effect in early AMD and so on and so forth. The question I would say is that, you know, the design of the AREDS 1 and definitely AREDS 2 has all these kind of flaws connected to them in terms of the true placebo nature and so on. But when I dig really, really deep into the AREDS, what I see is that, you know, antioxidants do have a role for macular degeneration. Unfortunately, neither study measured visual function properly. Remarkably, 800 million euros spent on an eye experiment for vision, and they didn't measure vision. Okay, the counter to that would be that they were looking at morphology, disease, and that's what they wanted to focus on. But the prevention of a disease like that it can take longer even than the duration of the AREDS intervention. The big learnings for me, let's cut to the chase here, is that the macula has 3 carotenoids. AREDS only provided 2, and AREDS 2, they really knew that there was 3 carotenoids, and they really should have had the 3rd carotenoid in their intervention. And we know the reasons why. You know, you're looking at commercial partners and so on and so forth, providing the supplement. When you look at the AREDS 2 study, the addition of carotenoids, which is what we've been talking about tonight, did have a significant benefit, particularly for those with low carotenoid profile to begin with. You know, an extra 20+% risk reduction, on average 10% risk reduction. Okay, so that's really, really important. But very recently, only last year, the 10-year follow-up, which no one is talking about, okay, because the patent is finished now, okay, and that's why it's not big news, but we should all be talking about, because the 10-year follow-up on AREDS was that these antioxidants are actually exceptionally important for all forms of AMD. So again, not to give the very nice speaker from your last one a difficult time, but I do agree with her that she said that it's kind of difficult to kind of break down what it's saying, but the conclusion I would disagree with is not kind of, it didn't really tell us much. It told us loads. You just need to understand how to look at it. The other really important thing from the AREDS investigation was that in their own experiment, they've shown that high zinc versus low zinc had no difference in terms of outputs. And then given the absolute known risk factors connected to high zinc consumption, it's absolutely bizarre that the NIH recommendation still is at the high level of zinc, and it shouldn't be. And I'll have that conversation with anyone who wants to have it, no problem. Okay. So what I would say is that if the, you know, AREDS has informed us, but the science has moved on so much beyond that. Okay. And if there's 3 parts to a jigsaw and you have a supplement that's been tested that provides those, why would you not take that one? So that's why in our experiment we elected to use the MacuHealth Plus, which was because we didn't want to, you know, I do think, by the way, the basic ingredients are, you mentioned it already, that you can obtain it from standard typical good diet. We can get a lot of those co-nutrients, as I call them, from good diet. We can't get the carotenoids. So, you know, I told you that it's a long time ago now that I measured my mom on one of my first OCTs that we had, which was much cruder than what we have now, but we saw these horrible changes in the back of her eye, which were, to someone that's been working in this area, you know, my initial reaction was to get help from the retinal doctors, and everyone looked at it, but we measured her macular pigment, and she's been on MacuHealth ever since and never misses a day. And her disease, it's, you know, I think it's 2007 that we detected Mam's changes. You know, then they're just age-related changes. They're going to happen. Everyone will get AMD eventually if we live long enough. It's what we're going to do about it to protect against it and enhance our vision when we have it.
And hello, Mom. I think you're on. Yeah, she signed up as a member. And Helen, Nolan, you should be very proud of your son. He is remarkable. He is. Anyway, I won't get into your kudos because it would take another hour. All right. And hello, Jake. Hope you're watching as well. Now, I want to get to the areas, okay? The MacuHealth, there is MacuHealth with just lutein, meso, and zeaxanthin in it. Anybody can take that, with or without AMD, with or without any cognitive problems. If you choose, if an AREDS2 supplement is recommended to you by your retinal specialist, MacuHealth Plus and Prime Plus has the AREDS formulation in it, but instead of 80 milligrams of zinc, it has 25 milligrams of zinc. And so the formulation is vitamin C, vitamin E, 25 milligrams of zinc, lutein, zeaxanthin, and meso-zeaxanthin. So if you want to take an AREDS2 supplement, I'm recommending MacuHealth Plus. And I'll give you that information after this. We have so much more going on. Is that pretty much it, Dr. Nolan? Does that summarize it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, yeah, but like, let's be very clear on something else here. I mean, I understand that some of the very good and very busy retinal specialists, if they do make a recommendation as coldly as they do about nutrition, they'll probably say AREDS, get an AREDS if you like, kind of thing, and we'll see you next year. I've seen this kind of approach. I can tell you that the AREDS study that was published and the very interesting data that it delivered was done on a formulation that is not currently the formulation being used. Because you'll remember I said to you that the science starts at the source, at the plant.
Yeah.
So I now understand that the sourcing of the materials for the AREDS form, the preservation, I think you call it,
yeah,
in America, is not the formula that was tested.
Oh boy.
It has the same nutrients.
Okay, that opens a whole can of worms. Oh Lord.
It's true though.
I know.
Yeah.
Eesh. Well, let me just go on to some more questions and maybe we'll come back. By the way, your mom said, I am very proud of you. Let's see. She said, I'm very proud. I think you are amazing. We do too. All right. How about if somebody has their gallbladder out? Is there any problem that you see taking the carotenoids?
No, not that I would imagine, or not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. And Carol says, am I to understand that I'm to take something other than AREDS2? Oh boy. Yes.
Again, let me come in on that.
Go.
So I just want to echo my sentiments here, that it's not the job of me or the job of science to take over a recommendation from the retinal specialist. And I need that to be very, very clear. Okay. However, you are empowered to have information and to have a discussion with your eye care specialist to arrive at the decision that I think is optimal for you. And my strong scientific views on that are that you need a supplement that has the testing, that has the stability, that is safe. So I would unapologetically say that you agree with the concept of an AREDS2 like intervention, but you don't want to take high zinc. Why should you? And you want one that has meso. So if you want it to be safer, have low zinc. If you want it to be better, have meso. And that's why MacuHealth Plus has that combined. So have the conversation and lead the conversation. It's your eye, it's your retina.
Oh boy. The questions are coming in fast, and I have to ask you, it's what, after 10 there? How much longer do you want to go on?
If your colleagues or friends are still asking questions, I'm in no rush. It's totally fine, as long as it's of interest to them.
Oh my goodness, yes. All right, let me just get down the list here. As far as Noel, I hope I pronounced that correctly, says, I wanted to mention that the bottles have a 3-month supply. Of some of the cost, they may think it's only a 1-month supply. Thank you. That's that applies to both the MacuHealth and the MacuHealth Plus. I've been eating a lot of foods with carotenoids, and my AMD is still progressing. One eye atrophy, never smoked. Is there a carotenoid supplement you would recommend? Zinc intolerant. We won't go in, we will not start the zinc intolerant today. That's another topic. As far as, again, okay, so what happens if, wait, let me just stop here and regroup. Can you take a multivitamin with the MacuHealth supplements?
You can with the classic MacuHealth. I think my mom sometimes does that. Sometimes she'll take fish oil, sometimes she'll take a multivitamin.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wouldn't do is take a multivitamin and MacuHealth Plus. I wouldn't double up on any type of supplements.
Right.
Yeah, you can not with carotenoids. The only bad thing can happen with carotenoids is you may, with very excessive amounts, you can get slightly yellowing of skin.
Mm-hmm.
There's been only one ever case of what we call crystallization in the retina where you can actually see it, and that was for someone that was like having 10 smoothies a day and taking all types of supplements. So but I wouldn't do you know, the simplicity of MacuHealth is the success. It's providing a solution right to the target tissue with the right amount of nutrients to deliver the right effective dose to optimize the pigment, to enhance the visual functions and protect the retina. And the simplicity of staying in that lane, in my view, has allowed us scientifically understand what's going on and then clinically and medically seeing the benefits of that.
So, Becky, I think what he's saying is that taking the MacuHealth supplement with it doesn't have any zinc in it, the one that just has the 3 carotenoids would be appropriate. We can't get into too many of the individual. I mean, he's not here to prescribe for you.
No.
Excuse me. How relevant and accurate is the AMD food pyramid that the RS offices provide? What retinal specialists provide an AMD pyramid? I guess Becky's. Have you?
Well, at least they are, right? At least.
Have you seen AMD food pyramid?
I think it probably maps the Mediterranean diet pattern. Would I be right? And if so, that's really good advice. Yeah, you couldn't but say that's good. I mean, one thing we didn't talk about tonight is how this is also connected to brain function. Yeah. Maybe we can do another discussion sometime on that.
We're going to have to. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So if you take Marilyn, if you take a multivitamin and an AREDS2-based supplement, make sure you're not getting too much of vitamin A, vitamin C. Oh my, excuse me. And Margaret says, Dr. Nolan or Linda, can you get a paper that we could share with RS? How about, Margaret, the article that I wrote? You know, the one that's posted today. She's a friend of mine. I can say that this way. So anyway, yeah, why don't you share a link with my article? How about that? That'd be good. I'm sorry, this is terrible. And also, people want to take saffron. What do you know about saffron?
I know very little. I know it's presented as very strong antioxidant, and it's very expensive to source. But I haven't studied saffron. I'm always asked about other nutrients and carotenoids, and I know, like, when we look at what we call systemic, so carotenoids that are in our taxi system, our blood system, they can be important wherever they kind of pass in terms of being in the blood. But the location of the 3 carotenoids, they live in the macula. You know, they're pre-receptorial, before the photoreceptors. Remarkably, it's not even complicated. You know, this idea that we should enrich these pigments, it makes just all the biological sense in the world. And when we look at it, just to make a point, because it's after triggering something in my brain, you know, when we looked at the cost-benefit analysis of providing the carotenoids to people at risk or with macular degeneration and using the published data, you'd save millions and billions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, for health systems. You know, but that's a vision I have, that eventually it'll become part of something that's provided. You know, right now we're the world is running around rightly providing vaccinations to try and help with COVID, and there's no question about cost because of the impact that COVID has on people's health and wellness. I mean, please take a look at macular degeneration and take a look at the evidence that's there.
Weren't you talking about to the government about adding these carotenoids to milk for children?
Yeah, we're running a project at the moment. I have two little girls, as you know, Penny and Bee. I think they're in my photo on your Facebook, and you know, Penny takes MacuHealth often. When I take it, I've no problem with it. But you know, it would be good if we could, in addition, maybe get it into kind of a food that they consume daily, and dairy is one possibility, because the fat soluble, they absorb well into those type of foods. So we have a project running there. We hope to have a new yogurt eventually in the future that we will have optimal amount of these carotenoids. So that's exciting. It's a bit down the line, but it's something coming in the future. But yeah, it should be these. We need to look at, in general health and medicine, we need to look at foods and, you know, fortifying, adding these to foods, because it's essential. And if we keep doing the same things, we'll keep getting the same results, basically, as we know.
When I was young, and that's many years ago now, there was a big push to, they took the nutrients out of our food and then had the great idea to add them back. So it was a big deal when you got bread that was fortified, cereal that was fortified. You know, why did you take them out in the first place? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, in terms of foods, one recommendation I didn't make was related to egg consumption. So eggs are really good for us, and they're not bad for cholesterol. They will increase your cholesterol, but they'll increase your good cholesterol, something called your HDL cholesterol. But the yellow that you see in the egg yolk is lutein and zeaxanthin, and it's a very good bioavailable source. So I think eggs is a very good suggestion for dietary, because some of the plants, the bioavailability is not good at all.
Yeah.
So,
Mary, the three carotenoids are zeaxanthin, lutein, and lutein, zeaxanthin, and meso-zeaxanthin. And I have all of this information in my article, so we can go over that. We can talk about it tomorrow. Sue says, when you talk about carotenoids connection with the brain as well as the eye, is anything showing up has to the effect on Alzheimer's, or is this for a later date video? Sue, that's very important to me because my mother had Alzheimer's. My dad had AMD at this.
Yeah.
So I looked into the research. Dr. Nolan's research is very clear that having healthy macular pigment is a biomarker, a biological sign that the brain carotenoids are important. And just like the eye, talking about oxidation and oxidative stress, the brain carotenoids protect and work against oxidative stress in the brain. So yes, there is a connection between, and there better be, because I have the family history of both AMD and Alzheimer's, and my husband's mother had AMD. She may not have had Alzheimer's, but some form of dementia. So we know there's a connection. So
yeah, and the risk factors are the same. They're almost identical. So I mean, it should be no surprise when I say that, as you know, when we can measure macular pigment, which we do in our laboratory, those with high macular pigment, there's a couple of key findings. Those with high macular pigment have high brain concentrations. We know this because of the brilliant work by Liz Johnson out of Tufts University. And around the same time, we did a massive experiment in over 5,000 people, where we measured the macular pigment, and a research colleague of mine measured cognitive function, which is basically brain function. And the conclusion from that experiment was very clear, and that was those with high macular pigment had much better cognitive brain functions, memory, attention, reaction time, decades before they were ever going to get the disease. So there's a memory enhancing capacity of these nutrients. And again, let's stick to our knowledge of oxidative stress, inflammation. Inflammation is the thing with Alzheimer's is everyone's looking for a silver bullet to fix it. You're never going to fix the disease that way. Again, you know, stop trying to treat plaques and tangles, these horrible proteins that stop the brain from doing the job it's trying to do. What you have to try and do is stop them being produced in the first place. Then they're like your drusen in your eye, if you like. It's the similarity. So, and yeah, Alzheimer's patients have the lowest scores of macular carotenoids I've ever seen.
Wow.
And in I'm writing a paper at the moment. Where did I put it? I have it here.
It's there
with Rebecca Power. I'm writing a paper at the moment, and we're going to submit it to the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, and that shows you that when you give Alzheimer's patients the carotenoids and omega-3 fatty acids, you can improve their carotenoid score, which is great. But we see in a very detailed study, carer reported improvements on those on the active ingredient versus placebo. So it's not that you fix the disease at all, or it's not that even everyone with Alzheimer's will do well, but a significant percentage of patients get benefit from, you know, getting in there with nutrition, and it makes perfect sense. You know, make those tissues healthier.
About when a person would see improvement in cognitive function, I asked that for a personal reason. I've been taking MacuHealth Plus for 2 months, Dr. Nolan. When is my brain going to start to work better? I'm not joking, but that brings me to the question. Some people think that you take a supplement like this with the 3 carotenoids, and if you don't see improvement, you stop. How long how long would it take this supplement?
Okay, well, it depends on what you're trying to do.
Okay.
But the first part of the answer is as follows. This is not something that you take today and you get the result tomorrow. Essentially, what we're trying to do is satisfy a depleted system, which is our biological system. So basically, you know, we need to enhance the blood system and the what we call the reservoirs, which are our fats. And if we do that, we can make it available for the target tissue. I'm getting double sound now again, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Oh boy, we have so many questions. As far as the connection between the carotenoids and the Alzheimer's, would you come back and talk to us about that someday? Would you come back and talk to us about that?
100%.
Yes.
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Does taking the carotenoids slow the advancement of macular degeneration? If so, is it because it helps maintain the health of the macula? People want to know if it's going to slow
the audio is all getting mumbled.
I'm sorry.
The audio is, maybe I'll come out and come back in, or will I come out and come back in, or
well,
do you want to?
No, I think what we ought to do, because I've got some people dropping out as well. This is fascinating, but we're just, you hear?
Gone over time.
Why don't I do that? Okay. I will go through the video tomorrow. I will write down all the questions that have not been answered, and I will send them to you. Okay? And then
sounds like a plan.
We can discuss how you will address them. Is that okay? I hope that's okay with everybody.
Sorry,
yeah, I think we should do that. Yeah, the audio is breaking up. All right, so if you have any questions for Dr. Nolan, please send them to me, but I'll tell you what, don't do that tonight. I think I'm going to have a big coughing spell. So I will post tomorrow something that says, give me your questions for Dr. Nolan. I'll take the ones we haven't answered tonight and I'll send them to him. All right, everybody? Is that okay? Dr. Nolan, is that okay?
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thanks. Great. Thank you.